Friendship isn't the big things, it's a million little things. Hello there friends, and welcome to this, another episode of A Million Little TV Shows podcast. This is where we break down and discuss episodes of TV shows that you may not have even heard of. I believe these TV shows need a little more love, and that is what this platform is here to do. Each week we will be covering different shows from all over the globe. We'll be breaking down each episode, giving you the main highlights, and going through it bit by bit. But for now, I think it's best that we find out what's on the menu today. Hello there, and welcome back to this A Million Little TV Shows podcast. This is now Season 6, Episode 6, and today, after a little change around in the schedule, which hopefully will become clear as to why in the next few weeks, I am going to be covering National Treasure: Edge of History. Now, this only got one season, and I am a massive fan of the National Treasure franchise, as are my friends over at the National Treasure Hunt podcast. Of course, that's why they call it that. And first of all, if you want any sort of real comprehensive, real in-depth, like these girls look at everything, go over, listen to them. If you love National Treasure, that is the place to be. But if you want a quick review, if you want a quick go over the series, obviously this is the place. And I will give you my wholehearted thoughts, feelings, and general nostalgic points throughout the whole series. Now, first of all, let's get the shilling out of the way. So, if you enjoy Game of Thrones, please come and join me over on my Patreon, where I cover episode by episode, where at time of recording I have currently finished Season 1. By hopefully the time that this comes out, I shall have finished Season 2, and possibly be into Series 3 by that point. I'm hoping to get out a couple of episodes a week. At this point, I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to be putting that together, but I am going to try and get one episode out every week, just like I do on this podcast, but it may be two. The episodes are quite quick, so it is just a matter of getting through it, editing it, and then putting it out there. So it's not going to be difficult. However, back to today. So we're going to be looking at National Treasure: Edge of History. Unfortunately, this doesn't include the cast from the original films, apart from one or two, but we'll go over that as we go. But hopefully, with the announcement of National Treasure 3, and with the good work that my friends at the National Treasure Hunt podcast are doing, they're doing quite a lot of investigating, lots of interviews with people that know a lot about this, and they keep breaking news when it comes to the filming of National Treasure 3 and the script and all that. So hopefully we will get that soon. Hopefully parts of this show can be incorporated into it, but we shall see. So let's get into it. This is National Treasure: Edge of History, Season 1, Episodes 1 to 3. This series stars Lizette Oliveira as Jess Valenzuela, Zuri Reed as Tasha Rivers, Antonio Cipriano as Oren Bradley, Jordan Rodriguez as Ethan Chow, Jake Austin Walker as Liam Sodeski, Catherine Zeta-Jones as Billie Pierce, and Landon Smith as Agent Ross. Episode 1, I'm a Ghost. So as the episode starts, we see a very familiar face to anyone who has enjoyed the National Treasure films. FBI agent Peter Sodeski is sat at a desk in what looks to be his own home, and he's talking to a recorder. Once again, Peter Sodeski is played by Harvey Keitel as he was in the movies, which is always a shock to see someone the calibre of Harvey Keitel on the small screen, and especially opening a show that really has nothing to do with the actual films other than its name, because at this point none of the original cast are in it apart from Peter Sodeski. So it's quite a shock. It's a very jarring moment to actually see Harvey Keitel right there. However, like I say, he's recording information that he knows about a treasure, and he talks about hundreds of years earlier when the conquistadors landed in the Americas and pillaged from the Incan, Mayan, and Aztec civilizations, and each of these civilizations has a part of the puzzle that will lead to the treasure of Montezuma, which is what the conquistadors were trying to find. And what they've done is they've split these into boxes, and they've hidden them so that they will never be found. Until now, it would seem that in 2001, one of these treasures was uncovered by a man named Raphael. But just as Raphael has the treasure, he is confronted by two men who tell him that he has betrayed Salazar and he will pay. Raphael takes out the men and heads home. Once he gets there, he tells his wife that he's going to have to pack up and they're going to have to leave. Him, her, and their child, a young girl, Jessita. As they head to leave, the two men that Raphael fought earlier head towards his house. He gets everything packed away and tells his wife to run with their daughter. But as he does, he hands their daughter a small trinket, a necklace, something that we saw earlier on that belonged to the indigenous women. As the mother and child run and they look in the mirror behind them, they see that the house that they used to live in is now on fire. Raphael has put up a good fight but has ended up knocked out in the house and is now laid out on the floor as his child and his wife flee. As the mother and daughter drive away, the mother looks at the daughter and asks her to never be like her father. 21 years later, we see what has become of this girl. Jess and her friends Tasha, Oren and Ethan are all locked up in a cell. But it turns out that this is actually an escape room and they are coming to the end of their time, so they have to get out as quickly as possible. It seems at least 3 of them have some sort of skill when it comes to these kind of puzzles and escape rooms. It's only Oren who seems to be concerned with his own selfish needs, including a comment about how he scuffed his sneakers, and how throughout he actually thought this was going to be a date with Tasha. It seems that they have an on and off relationship, and at the minute they're in an off position. However, when it comes to the other two, Jess and Ethan, there also seems to be some tension there, as both Ethan and Jess talk about how they haven't been together and how lucky they are that they haven't. But you can see it on Ethan's face that he is not too pleased about that. Eventually they all escape and are shocked because this is the first time that anyone would have escaped from this room. But as Oren walks out, once again, he is selfish and is looking at his phone. The cameras pick it up and the announcement comes over that they've been disqualified due to the fact that someone had a phone in there. Of course, the group is sort of used to this and sort of just roll their eyes at Oren. They're pissed off, but hey ho, they've had a fun day. But Oren is more obsessed with shoes than he is with playing games like that. And so he splits from the group and heads off into town to go and queue up for the latest sneakers. Over in Spain, we see a blonde woman enter a building, and it seems to be some sort of mansion. As she comes closer into the camera, we see that it's Catherine Zeta-Jones, so we can only assume that this is Billie. Billie tells of how the man who owned this property had an unfortunate accident and is no longer with them. And as she heads through the house, she tells them that this man had a lot of artifacts from the conquistadors hidden away somewhere in his house. They manage to locate it. Billie bashes through the wall and they start to look at the archive. However, the thing that she is looking for, some sort of obsidian object, isn't among the relics. She gets a call from someone who seems to be head of some group, and he tells her that they're not impressed with the fact that she cannot find the item that she's looking for. But she tells them that it's been 20 years. Someone was looking for the treasure, we'd know about it. Back in the US, we see that Jess is frantically looking for something throughout her apartment, and she's got both Tasha and Oren looking for whatever it is. Eventually Ethan comes back, so we can assume that they all live together as well. And Ethan is the one who had the thing that she was looking for, and it turns out it's a recipe from her mother. This is where we learn that a year earlier her mother died, and they are going to be making empanadas in her memory. As for Jess, we actually learn a little bit about her. So Tasha is a YouTuber and seems to have quite a good viewing over there. I think she says something like 100k. By the way, I'm now on YouTube as well, so if you can go over there and give this a little look, that'd be great. And it would seem that Oren does something where he is fairly well off. We're not sure about Ethan yet. And as for Jess, she seems to work at one of those storage places with like the storage garages, and she goes over to her boss and asks if she can have a raise because their rent is going up. She heads into a storage bin and is told by the manager that she needs to find out who this belongs to. The name that was given is I Am Phasma, and the manager believes that this is a foreigner. However, she tells him that Phasma in Latin is ghost, and so it means I am ghost, or I am a ghost. And so it just seems like a mystery to Jess, and she gets excited. In this storage bin is a bunch of stuff that look like pretty much the same kind of stuff that Billie was pulling out of the mansion over in Spain. And as she looks through it, she finds a bunch of just old relics. So Jess begins to puzzle over what is in there. And she's told that if she finds the name of the person, she can become assistant manager. It's here that we end up getting the opening credits. And to be fair, we had 13 minutes in at that point, and we're only just getting the opening credits. So I think that's pretty huge. That is a pretty big leap to go all that time, 13 minutes, without getting the opening credits. Now, the credits are brilliant. They're drawn around a map and very much in the style of National Treasure, just with a little sort of Mexican flavour to it. It is the National Treasure theme song. And throughout the start of this, we've heard the National Treasure theme song a few times. So it brings that nostalgia back. It brings that feeling of watching Nick Cage do his thing. And it's very special. So some of the items that she finds in this storage bin are an American flag, which would have been for a soldier who died in a war, and this gavel. And it seems that this man was a Freemason. And so she does a little bit of digging and eventually finds out that it was the son of Peter Zadesky. And so Jess decides that she's going to go and speak to him. However, when Jess gets there, at first Peter Zadesky seems very sharp of mind, even though he does have someone who is looking after him. But throughout his conversation with Jess, he seems to be on the ball. He seems to be very compos mentis. But as he talks to her and asks her questions about the necklace that she's wearing, which belonged to her father, she doesn't know what to think. He then starts to ramble about how certain civilizations gave us tomatoes and how others gave us potatoes, and she starts to think that he's just off his game a little bit now. He walks away, heads over to his bookcase and starts to push some levers, and as he does, he hands her a letter that says Liam on it. And she tells him, I'm not Liam, I'm Jess, remember? And he looks her dead in the eye and tells her not to trust anyone. Jess leaves, but seems confused by all of this. And so as she leaves, she tells his nurse that maybe they should contact his grandson Liam and see if he can shed any light on this letter. It turns out, however, that Billie is watching Sadusky's house. When Jess gets home, she realises that Sadusky has planted the letter on her, and she doesn't know what to do with it. Tasha and Oren suggest opening it, but Jess just doesn't want to get involved. Even when Oren calls her a treasure hunter, she just isn't bothered. At this point, we also see that Oren is holding a copy of one of Riley Poole's books, which is obviously a great nod to the actual films, as well as the fact that during Sadusky's speech to Jess, we keep hearing this swell of music throughout, and it just gives that warmth, that nostalgic feeling of the treasure hunts that happened in National Treasure, and whenever Ben Gates, Nick Cage, was finding something out, and it was always a beautiful swell of music that rose throughout, and it just reminded me of how much I enjoyed those films. So it's always nice throughout this season to actually get those nostalgic vibes. The next day, when Jess turns up at work, she tells her boss that she figured out who it was. She says it was Peter Zadesky, but before she can finish the sentence, he says the name as well. He tells her that the FBI have turned up, and they are looking through his bin. When Jess speaks to these FBI agents, she gets told that Peter Zadesky died. He was 87 and he died in his sleep. But before he died, Jess was one of the last people to see him, and the FBI grill her about this letter that she's got, but she claims that she didn't take it from him, which isn't technically a lie. She didn't take it from him. She just found it when she got home. But it turns out that the FBI agents are fake because they actually work for Billie. Billie tells them that this girl must have known that they were fake. They've given it away somehow. And we actually find out from Jess how she actually knew. Because Jess is very much like Nick Cage in the films. She notices little differences in certain things. So for instance their FBI badges were signed by the president instead of being signed by the director of the FBI. And when Jess picked up on that, she knew straight away that these people weren't real. Jess and Tasha get back to their flat and they find it ransacked. Their box of stuff from Peter Sadesky's gone, and Jess doesn't know what to do. However, Oren turns up and he has moved out and has brought a box back that he took mistakenly, and that was Peter Sadecki's box. Jess looks for the letter, opens it, and finds a picture in there with some writing on the back. She thinks that the only thing that she can do is go and try and speak to Liam to try and give him this box of stuff. But Tasha isn't too keen on it until she actually sees a photo of Liam. And, I mean, he's a good-looking lad, so, yeah. They end up going over and seeing him singing in a bar. However, when they actually approach him and ask him, do you want this box of stuff? Do you want this letter? He's very dismissive of them. You can tell that there's been a lot of hurt in the family, and he just doesn't want anything to do with it. Jess thinks all hope is lost and goes to throw out the box, but then she recognises something from the actual picture. It's of a Masonic lodge, and in the picture, a young Liam and his father are doing a Masonic handshake. Jess and Tasha try and head over there, but when they do, the fake FBI agents turn up, and Jess and Tasha have to run from them. Eventually, they end up at the Masonic lodge, and Jess starts to tinker with the items that she's got, which is the gavel, and trying to recreate the picture that Sadecki had, because she believes it was a clue. Now, again, one thing, trying to get into that Masonic lodge was the worst thing I've ever seen. She just walks up and pretends that she's a cleaner and essentially shakes this man's hand with this Masonic handshake that she's just seen in the picture, and he just lets her in. But it worked, so fuck it. Why not? After a little bit of exploration in the room, Jess eventually finds out what this puzzle is. And when she manages to find the final clue, she opens a box, and inside it is the obsidian box. Her and Tasha show Ethan a video of what they did, and Ethan just can't believe it. He doesn't want to have anything to do with it. However, then Jess gets a phone call, and it's Billie. And Billie tells her that she's been looking for the box. She knows that Jess is in financial trouble and is willing to pay whatever it is to get it. However, when Jess tells her that it's not for sale, Billie informs her that they have Oren, and if they don't give Billie the box, they'll kill him. However, in Mexico, we see a guard walking down the hall. As he passes one of the cells, a man comes up to the front and tells the man in the cell next to him that, Salazar, when you escape, take me with you. And this man, Salazar, at that point is drawing the symbol that is on Jess's necklace, as well as the symbol that was on the box that Jess found. And so now we can only estimate that a lot of trouble is coming Jess's way. Episode 2, The Treasure Map. And we pick up straight away from where the last episode ended. So Billie has Oren, and she tells Jess that she wants to meet. Jess brings the obsidian box, and they bring Oren, and they will do an exchange for him. But Jess isn't happy about the location, and therefore tells her that she'll meet her somewhere else. She suggests the USS Kidd Museum, due to the fact that Jess knows the place very well because she used to work there. She also knows that there is a guard on at all times, so Billie can't really try anything. Throughout this conversation, Jess tries to get Tasha to go to the FBI with her. At this point, Tasha has already had her equipment hacked, so you'd think she'd be a little bit more on board with this. But actually, she thinks that if they get on the FBI's radar, at some point, they're going to get their collars felt. And so she tells Jess that she's not up to it, but eventually Jess just turns around and goes, I think we should stick to the plan. I think we should go to the FBI. As soon as Tasha suggests that maybe they should talk to Ethan about what's going on. And Jess's justification for going to the FBI instead of going to Ethan is that Ethan wasn't happy when he found out that they'd found the box. So now that Oren's been taken, he's really not going to be pleased. However, when they get to the FBI officers, Tasha tries to convince Jess not to say anything. However, when FBI agent Ross comes out just after speaking with Agent Hendricks, played by Armando Riesco, which is the same Agent Hendricks from the films, so that's the second familiar face we've seen in this franchise so far. Agent Ross comes to speak to Jess and Tasha, and Jess just wants to spill everything. She just wants to tell the whole story, but Tasha can see the kind of hole that she's going down and starts to interrupt her. And so when Agent Ross asks their names and Oren's name, Tasha gives false information. And it's here that Agent Ross starts to believe that this story isn't true, and so becomes very dismissive of it. And so, as they leave the FBI officers, Jess and Tasha realise that they are now on their own. As they head over to the meet-up point, Jess starts looking at the obsidian box. And as she is, she sees that the face of this has some sort of dials on it, and begins to tinker with it. She realises that it needs to be facing due north, and points it that way. And then when she realises that actually the dials will tell a story, she begins to play with the symbols and ends up coming up with the solution. Now I actually agree with Aubrey and Emily over at the National Treasure Hunt podcast, because this is a little bit silly. I didn't think about it at the time, but I do now because of what they said. Jess gets this way too quickly. She doesn't have a story behind it. She doesn't have a tale that her mother used to tell her or anything like that. It's just she looks at the symbols, she picks one, she chases it down a rabbit hole basically, and comes up with this ridiculous story. And then the box opens. However, inside the box, it has 6 sides. And so on each side of the box, there is symbols. And it looks like if you put it together with maybe some other sides, it would actually create a map. But since they don't have those, they end up just taking pictures of each piece and then putting the box back together so they can hand it over to Billie in one piece. Jess gets to the meet-up with Billie. Just before they head in, Dario and Casey take Oren to one side and tell him that if he does anything stupid, they're going to kill him. And so, straight away, Oren is terrified. They also say that if anyone does anything stupid, they're going to kill them too. So Oren is there just trying to make sure that everyone comes out of this safely. Billie heads into the store to meet Jess, and Jess tries to plant something on her so that Billie gets caught on the way out of the store by the Marine that's in there. But as she does, Dario walks out at the same time, and she hands off the box to him. When she comes back into the store, she pleads innocence and that nothing happened. But Tasha blurts out that she kidnapped our friend. The guard tries to talk to Oren, but Oren's having none of it and says that he doesn't know what the two girls are talking about. After Billie leaves and both Tasha and Jess speak to Oren, he tells them what happened. That they all weren't getting out alive if anything happened. So that's why he never said anything. They head home and start to plan on what's next. After what was a pretty scary day, Oren ends up being pretty excited when he hears the news about what they found inside the obsidian box. He believes that they're looking for a real treasure map, and he starts to get really giddy about it and just says whatever Jess needs, he is behind her 100%. Tasha goes off to try and find out more about Billie, because she's basically a tech whiz, a bit like Riley in the films. And Oren, who is the other side of Riley in the films, is basically an absolute goofball who has just high energy and just wants to try and help out wherever he can. At this point, they all agree that they still are going to keep Ethan out of the loop. Jess heads over to Sadusky's because she believes that since the first clue came from there, maybe there's more there, and maybe she can find out more about these maps. She gets there, and obviously, with the fact that Sadusky's dead, she doesn't know what to think when she finds the door open, but she heads inside anyway. While in there, she starts to remember some of the things that Sadusky did, and tries to manipulate the bookcase to open up maybe another secret passage. But she ends up pulling a book down that, when it opens, she recognises the symbols inside it. It's the ones from her necklace and the one from the obsidian box. But at that point, she hears a noise outside, and in walks Liam. He's swinging either a golf club or a tire iron or something like that, and Jess has a fucking umbrella. Like, she's going to be protected from that. And after a moment of her trying to tell him that they found something when it came to the clue that he gave them, Liam ends up turning into Patrick Gates, because he just keeps saying, yep, and then you'll find another clue, and you'll just keep chasing it. And after a conversation earlier where Liam spoke to his mother, it would seem that his father, Liam's father, and Peter Sadusky's son was very much in the mould of Ben Gates. It would seem that he's been treasure hunting before and it ruined him. And so Liam just doesn't want to get into that life. And he tells Jess very much that good luck to you, but I won't be following. Billie, however, is using state-of-the-art technology on this box, And as she's scanning it, she actually finds a clue inside from Jess. While Jess was in the store, she actually managed to get hold of a key ring with a bottle opener on it. And that's the item that she tried to get Billie caught with because she hid it inside the box. So now Billie knows that Jess is the one who has opened this. And yet she has no idea who Jess actually is or why Sadusky would have given her this clue. Oren heads over to stay with Ethan. I know earlier I said that they seem to all live together, but they don't. Ethan has his own place and is having Oren stay with him because of the fact that he and Tasha have split up. But when Ethan talks to Oren, he finds out that Oren wasn't where Jess said he was the previous day. Obviously, at that point, Oren had been kidnapped, but Jess didn't want to worry Ethan, so didn't exactly tell him properly where Oren was. But once he finds out that Jess has kept this from him, and it's all about this treasure hunt, Ethan goes to see Jess. And he tells her that he can't understand why she lied to him. They've never kept secrets from each other. But Jess confronts him and says, well, what about Mina, who is a girl that Ethan has just started to see, and it's been around about 6 weeks for them. So it seems like these feelings that they have towards each other have created division between them. Jess gets into work, and the previous day when she was obviously trying to find Oren, she asked someone else to cover her shift, but that person didn't turn up, and due to that, she ends up getting fired from the storage bin place, which is going to be a real risk to her and Tasha because they need to bring in some rent. Tasha suggests that maybe they could go to the local bar where they met Liam and see if there's any jobs going there. But when Liam actually finds her there, he isn't impressed because he thinks that she's stalking him. She tells him that it's nothing to do with that. I need a job and I'm here because there's vacancies. After Liam bombs on stage once more, don't get me wrong, he's a fucking good singer, but the crowd is just never there for him. And he's told by the bar owner that he's no longer going to be having live music. It's probably going to turn into a karaoke bar. And so Liam, downhearted by this, and by a conversation that he had earlier with his mother, where his mother essentially said that he's wasted his potential like his father did, he decides he's going to do something about it. He heads over to Jess and just says that he'll help her, that he's got something to show her, and after their shift, they head over to Peter Sadesky's house. Once inside, Liam takes her to the bookcase, and instead of opening another secret compartment, he opens a whole secret room. Jess steps inside and sees all manner of Incan, Mayan, and Aztec objects, as well as a bunch of books that all detail this Montezuma's treasure, but Liam tells her that it all started from this one thing. He hands her a manuscript, and as she opens it, she's shocked to see the name on the front, because the clue that started all of this treasure hunt for Peter Zadesky was written by Jess's mother. Episode 3, Graceland Gambit. Amongst the things that Peter Sadesky had was a videotape, and Jess heads over to see Oren with Tasha and Liam to use his video camera so that they can watch what was on the videotape. And it turns out the tape was of Jess's mom many years earlier, before even Sadesky started looking for this treasure. And she stands up in front of a group of men and explains to them about the treasure of Montezuma and how it all came about. She tells them that every time that war broke out, the treasures from the village would be hidden away. And over time, those treasures accumulated. And so when the conquistadors turned up, they knew they had to protect this treasure. And so while a young woman named Maliche was helping the conquistadors, she was also a double agent. And she was actually trying to get a group called the Daughters of the Plumed Serpent to look after these treasures. And all these women are wearing the exact same necklace that Jess is wearing now. And she remembers what Sadesky said, that if you are holding that necklace, you are someone who has to look after the treasure. Jess also sees part of the video later, after her dad intervenes in this whole meeting with these men, because they think what Jess's mother's saying is just fantasy. He tries to defend her. But afterwards we see a happy home video, and it's Jess's dad and mother in a kitchen back in their home, and as he spins her around, we see that she's several months pregnant, obviously with Jess. Ethan finds out that they're treasure hunting, but after seeing the evidence that Jess gives him, he decides that he's in. And so all 5 of them head over to Peter Sadusky's house. Meanwhile, Agent Ross from the FBI seems to be looking into the murder of Peter Sadusky. In the last episode, I forgot to mention that she was looking into Sadusky's life and the fact that he was the man who caught the man who took the Declaration of Independence. And all this time she's talking to Agent Hendricks about it. And of course, we know who Agent Hendricks is. He's from the films, so we already know that he knows this. But he doesn't say a word, and then later on in this episode, as he's talking to her, he says that he knows what she's feeling right now. She wants to find out what happened to Sadusky because she doesn't want to get anything wrong. And he knows exactly that feeling because he was the one who took the call about someone wanting to steal the Declaration of Independence. And so it's this that just keeps tying into the original movies, and it's beautiful. Once they get to Sadusky's house, and by they I mean Jess's group, they start to go over some clues that are in Sadusky's clue room, including one about a Sun King. And as they begin to pick it apart, they realise that the Sun King isn't Louis XIV, who they first thought it was, but actually Elvis Presley. Elvis was part Cherokee. His grandmother was called Mourning Dove White, and dove is a symbol of peace, which is part of the clue. He was the king of rock and roll, and he also had a label called Sun Records. They deduce further that they need to look at one of Elvis's guitars, but Tasha can't find it anywhere in Graceland, until Oren brings up the fact that there is a secret room in Graceland, and that's where they have to go. Some of the other items that we actually find in this room are the Meerschaum pipe from the Charlotte, which is in National Treasure 1, the glasses of Benjamin Franklin, also from the first film, and from the second film we find the Olmec plank, which was in the Resolute desk at Buckingham Palace. And also, one interesting thing is that, according to Liam, his dad found the jade box at Cibola, which is where the treasure was uncovered in the second film. And so maybe was it included in what Ben Gates found? Who's to say? Billie, however, finds out what is inside that box. She manages to find the map in there and then realises that that is the play. So she goes and gets the jade box and does exactly the same to start to complete this map, and finds a heading for her and her crew to head out to, whereas Jess and her team are heading out towards Graceland. And so once they get to Graceland, they have an elaborate plan to try and get this clue, whatever it is, from this guitar that they believe that they need. After Oren has already been in and let out some moths that if anyone sees them will think that are going to be a threat to Elvis's clothes. However, they're not going to be at all. They're not the type that eat cloth. And they know that they're going to have to call in experts, so Liam and Ethan are disguised as those experts. They come in, capture the moths, and then have to do a full inspection. They walk around Graceland, and Ethan heads down to the basement, where this secret room is. He takes some pictures, especially of the guitar, but then has to head out, because the actual exterminators have turned up. Once they get out, Jess has a look at the pictures and realises that they're not good enough. They've actually missed something, and that it isn't the guitar, it's actually a gold record that Elvis has down there that Jess needs to listen to. And so she now has to get back into Graceland. She does so with the help of Liam, who has now disrobed his actual disguise, so he wouldn't be recognised anyway. And when he heads back in, he distracts the crowd while Jess heads down to the basement. She takes a recording of this record and heads back out. But all the while, Jess and Liam just keep exchanging these glances between each other, these flirtations, and you can see straight away that it is getting to Ethan. He does not like the fact that this guy is stepping on his toes, even though he's dating someone. Billie's clue, however, has sent them off to Mexico. Billie's mission, however, ends up in a bust where they get to in this mountain range is exactly what she thought she was looking for. It has Incan, Mayan, and Aztec scripture all over the walls, even though people said that they never conversed. And so as she's looking round, her Nate, who I said was Dario earlier, but it's actually Nate, and Casey are trying to find something. Nate, however, has a drone with him, and when it gets caught up on something, he heads off to go and find it. We then hear a crash, and we find that Nate has fallen into a trap, and we can only assume perished. Billie realises that this is all a bust, and she gets them to get out of there, her and Casey. Ethan goes over to see Liam and just tells him to be careful when it comes to Jess, because she's essentially not a legal immigrant in the US, and any issues that she has, she will be deported. She's trying to get her status, but until she gets it, she can just be deported on a whim. And so she has to keep her nose clean, and what they did in Graceland was highly illegal. Ethan heads over and tells Jess what he's done, and Jess is annoyed at him, but it's okay, it's done. However, she goes to see Liam and tells him a totally different story, that Ethan should have known better. He's known her long enough, he's her oldest friend, and that's not cool what he did. Jess thinks this treasure hunt will actually define who her parents were. She always thought she understood up until this last week who they were and who she was, but now she needs to find this treasure to make sure that their legacy lives on. Liam, however, being into music, has managed to decode this track that Jess got. It was all muffled before, and he's managed to run it through a sequencer. As they listen to it, they realise that it's backwards, and when they flip it, it's Elvis's voice. He gives them a clue, and they can't believe that they're getting one step closer. However, Billie on her plane is sat having a drink with Casey. Casey thinks that maybe there isn't a treasure. Maybe it's all a myth. But just then, a message comes through on Billie's phone, and it's the exact message that Liam just played to Jess. Okay, so I do love this show. It's such a fun show, but I can see that it does have issues. When you look deeper beneath the surface, you can see that it does have some flaws, but it's an adventure. It's just meant to be one episode, 45 minutes, just quick and just fun. And I think that's what it is. I think the thing that lets it down is the fact that we've waited so long for a National Treasure IP to come out that this wasn't the thing that we wanted, and it just fell flat. But actually, when you're watching it, the nostalgia hits, and the music throughout, and the cast of old characters, and just looking in and seeing things that have come from the movies makes this show so fun. And it makes me want to watch National Treasure and National Treasure Book of Secrets again, which can't be a bad thing. Disney Plus had that IP and they wanted to put it out there and get people watching those films as well as watching this show, so they've done that. I don't understand their reasoning behind not having a season 2, because this was rated pretty well. Like I say, it got mixed reviews, but so did National Treasure Book of Secrets. So did the original National Treasure. And I love those films. I just think that Disney should have given this another shot. Just put in one more season, wrapped it up properly, and then they could have filled another couple of weeks on their platform that they're constantly saying they don't have enough content for. You just got rid of a bunch of content, and you're $1 billion company, so just do it. It makes no sense to me, but that's why I'm not in charge of a multi-billion-dollar company, I suppose, and I get to rant about it on the internet. But anyway, I think this has got off to a really fun start, a really good start, and I genuinely can't wait to see more of it. As I'm going through, I'm sort of picking out plot points and remembering things that are coming up, and that obviously helps the show, but it also hinders the show. I'd say that the rewatch value of it isn't that great, but after a few years of not watching it, I'd say it's definitely worth a rewatch. However, like I say, I always have Aubrey and Emily talking in my ears every weekend about how different National Treasure is to this series, so I get quite a lot of information from those two. But anyway, as for today, please go over and subscribe to Patreon if you can. It would be a massive help and will help me do a lot more with this podcast. I hope you're all doing well out there. It's really good to hear from you when I can. But as for today, I will speak to you soon. Bye. And that is it for now, amigos. And yes, I am as angry as you are at me for that sentence, but I hope you enjoyed the show and had some fun along the way. It means a lot that you are listening and supporting me. This is an independent podcast after all, and doesn't get a lot of backing, so it is great to know that you're out there, you're listening. And if you want to come talk to me on any of the platforms I'm on, just come say hi. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, and I'm even a little bit on TikTok. I don't post that much, but I'm on there. And you can also drop comments in the comment sections on any of the platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, wherever you get podcasts from. But as always, thank you for your time, and I will speak to you soon.